Hey everyone, Kayla here. Welcome back to another video. So in this week's video, I want to address a certain behavior or mindset that seems to happen for a lot of people either earlier on or midway through their recovery. It's almost as if some part of you, the disordered or brainwashed side of you, keeps popping up trying to tempt you to go back to restricting or to go back to your old body size or body aesthetic or leanness. And some of us often do go back and forth between restriction, like ketogenic, paleo, Whole30, vegan, and then back to recovery once we feel out of control and binge again or feel so weak that it's either our life or recovery. But then we find ourselves back to an exercise regime like high intensity interval training or other draining as hell exercise regimes, and then hate our lives and say, this time we're committed to recovery, and then the cycle continues for a period of time, for some longer and for others shorter. So I want to address this because I totally understand, and I went back and forth for years. So most of the early times of binging and purging after my fitness competition or photo shoots that I had to deplete myself for, or then later binging after orthorexia of trying to heal my body with all these clean eating fads like paleo, keto, veganism, detoxing. But then I ended up going back to a water fast, and then after raw veganism, and then keto, and all of this again, and all this other bullshit. And I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't understand recovery. I didn't even know what recovery was, which is what I refer to as my real recovery. And that's when I became aware of what the hell was going on, what was happening to me and my body. But I still then yo-yoed for months between keto again and veganism and then clean eating and intermittent fasting and HIIT workouts and other things. So, if you're wondering, what to do when you keep wanting to go back to your old diets or, old body after a certain point in your recovery, within the first few months or 6 months or a year or even more, then this video is for you. This is the hard part where people get stuck in quasi recovery or they relapse completely. So this is normal, and hopefully by understanding what's happening, maybe you can give yourself some compassion to feel it, but not act on it. And that is the grieving process. So you're literally in grief, and grief takes a long time. In most cultures or religions, they give the individuals up to a year or even more to fully grieve. But not in our culture where, everybody forgets or thinks that you should just be over it within a few months, right? I've come to understand the stages of grief that we face in recovery from disordered eating and body image. And this is why a lot of us stay stuck in this quasi recovery for so many years. And we get frustrated as to what's going on, and we get frustrated with ourselves for continuing to go back even though we know deep down that it doesn't work for us. So hopefully by understanding this and what I'm going to talk about in this video, it can help you just, put that frustration at ease. Grief can be caused by the loss of a belief system, an identity, a capacity or role, a hope about ourselves, or an overall attitude towards our life. And it goes something like this. These are the stages of dietary grief. Number 1 is shock. This is the initial paralysis of the news. So the news of, how the diets and restrictions and mentalities around food itself and our body, and how it's been hurting you and, pushing you actually further away from health and freedom and happiness and desirability and confidence, rather than getting you closer to these things that you thought that was gonna come from your diet or exercise regime, or shaming yourself into these things. And also how the beliefs around food could be wrong. So number 2 is denial. You're trying to avoid the inevitable. So avoiding giving up the food restrictions, the over-exercising, the food rules, the need for willpower and self-control, or denial that you'd have to give up strict 100% clean eating, denial that what you've been doing has been the culprit to your suffering and food problems. Number 3 is anger. You may be feeling frustrated and have an outpour of bottled up emotions, You may be angry at diet culture, at certain gurus that made promises that deceived you, or maybe at yourself for what you've done to your body out of ignorance, though, or to the world for how a lot of people never question the system. You may be at your body for binging, for not cooperating with your mind's demands and desires, and whatever else. It could be anything. And I'd highly advise you to maybe pause this and write down your own list, because that would be helpful for you to better process, or for this to make more sense for your unique situation and whatever you may be feeling, and what you've gone through in the past. And so number 4 is bargaining. But you seek in vain for a way out. You try to say, okay, well, I can still be at this super lean body fat percentage, and that's caused all of this hormonal problems and digestive problems and fatigue and malnourishment, and still recover at the same time and at the same weight and at the same body fat percentage. Or you say, well, I can still exercise as much as I was when I was in my disordered eating and recover my period back and overcome the extreme hunger and binging. I can do both simultaneously. So these kinds of things where you're bargaining with yourself. And so number 5 is depression. So you're finally realizing, of this inevitable. You may be depressed that you're going to have to gain a bit of body fat and potentially overshoot in order to get your health back. Or that you have to let go of this level of fitness for the time being in recovery that you worked so hard for to achieve, and you feel that it's all going to go to waste, and so you're depressed that you're going to have to take a break. And so you're depressed that you're going to have to break your safe and comfortable routine, or you're depressed that you're going to have to eat certain foods that are necessary for your health and sanity that you've believed are the devil or toxic or bad or off limits for so long, and thoughts like this. And so mindsets or thoughts like this that may be contributing to bouts of depression or sadness. Number 6 is testing. You are seeking realistic solutions. You try different methods and approaches, learning from others who have recovered or from personal research, and seeing what's going to be sustainable and realistic for you and your body and your priorities in life. And so you seek all paths to recovery and see what's going to be the most beneficial for you and balanced, regardless of what your starved, irrational reptilian brain is saying that you need. This is finding and defining your own unique balance, which this is subject to change at different stages of our life, right? And it's okay to adjust after we found a certain balance or a certain lifestyle, and then something changes in our life, our priorities change, some big life crisis or some big life shift or mindset shift, or we go on to a new path, and this may change, and you just adjust accordingly. No big deal, right? You just adjust as you go. And number 7 is acceptance. So you're finally finding the way forward. We accept what is and what is not. That saying of "it is what it is" becomes our mantra. And it may not be completely in all aspects of our life, but at least in the aspect of, eating and our body and exercise. It is what it is. How it's been and what's going to change now in order to be where you want to be a few years down the line. So you can surrender and you accept and you let go. You look forward and you take necessary action and you commit. So you set out on your path to full recovery, full committed recovery, and out of quasi recovery. And while doing that, you continue to live your life as you recover still, right? You don't put your life on hold until you lose the weight, or you're perfectly in tune with your hunger and fullness signals, or, any of these if-then mindsets. No, you live your life now, knowing that each day you're getting closer to where you need to be or want to be. So not trying to control and change everything along the way, and allowing things to happen as needed. So the fastest way to move from, the bottom to the top of the grief scale is by telling the truth to ourselves and others. So not staying in denial and suppressing unwanted emotions, or realities or belief systems or mindsets, and committing ourselves to our healing journey and, doing whatever it takes to allow ourselves to fully heal. So as we go through the stages of dietary grief and initially have an overwhelming feeling of despair, but then we begin to surrender maybe, there may be anger that arises. So anger is associated with pride and our ego, which plays a big role into why we got into this disordered eating thing in the first place, if you really take a step back and look at where this all started. So there may be a lot of anger in the form of resentment too. So whether anger with diet culture, anger with, people who bullied us when we were younger and that contributed to our insecurities, anger towards ourselves, things that I listed already earlier in this video, anger that we depleted or neglected our bodies, and now that we have to go through recovery and it's so frustrating, or, anger again that our body isn't cooperating in the way that we think it should, or as fast as it should go, as fast as it should recover. Or maybe, frustrated angry that, why won't my body stay skinny and lean and lose the weight quicker? But this is self-invalidation, which is a form of anger expressed against yourself. So there's also considerable amounts of fear, right? I'm sure you guys have had a lot of fears, like fear foods, anxiety around eating certain off-limit foods, anxiety or fear around gaining some weight. And when these arise, they can be addressed, such as, letting go of the fear that you will just eat and eat until you're obese, and that you'll, never be able to fix your metabolism, that it's just too late, or that, your body's never gonna find a healthy set weight point again, or up to your current standard that's brainwashed by diet culture and beauty culture. When we can begin to let go rather than escape and suppress, no longer does this residual harm, such as, ending up in bitterness or unconscious guilt or conscious guilt or lowered self-esteem. The fragmented expression of emotions may continue to, reoccur for a period of time, even years. So fragmented expression, like, you don't fully express, feel, and let go of different emotions, anger, bitterness, despair, depression, all of this stuff. It may come up in a fragmented way, not in a full expression, but we're able to let go of that little bit, little by little. So it's the baby steps. That's why this stuff takes so long, because it can be too much to just deal with everything all at once and just overnight, overcome something, right? It takes hours and hours. My therapist actually told me that it takes 600 hours to fully overcome and ingrain a new habit in our neural networks. So it takes 600 hours. So think about how long that takes with the recurrence of a fear that pops up. How often does that have to happen for you to fully reach 600 hours of practice? That's a long time. So be patient with yourself. When someone begins to eat unsafe foods or sees the body start to change, handling it from an intellectual level will produce thousands of thoughts and, hypothetical scenarios. So that, oh my gosh, sensation that we can just spiral out of control, and which leads to a panic attack, or extreme anxiety. So also those, what if this and what if that, and oh my gosh, what if kind of thing. Rather than just going with it and allowing it to organically fall into place and just trusting the process. Because then you're just gonna, suffer through a lot of sleepless nights due to these racing thoughts of fear and doubt and guilt and shame, which won't help you get to where you want to be any quicker, because your mind just reviews it over and over and over again. And, what does that really do for you? Someone once said, worrying only means suffering twice. So you worry when it's not even your reality, and then you suffer again if and when it even happens. So, just cross that bridge once you get there. You may be thinking about constant nutrition facts and diet beliefs and fears racing through the mind, or all the thoughts about fat and weight gain and, weight loss and, what others will think, and all of these racing thoughts. So we all know, or may not, that grief over something traumatic happens, at all different stages, and it's not a linear process. It comes in waves, and it can jump back and forth and can do this for years. So from anger to sadness to guilt to letting go until you finally get to acceptance, and you may reach acceptance and you feel that feeling of like, okay, I commit fully 100% to recovery. And then you find yourself maybe the next day or the next week back at guilt or doubt or fear or anger. And you think like you failed. And so you probably get down on yourself that you failed. So you might as well just like say, fuck it all together, because you thought it, had finally overcome it, and you were committed, and how could you fail yourself or your body? Or, you thought that it was just going to be easier from there on out after letting go and accepting at one point in your journey, So getting to a place of just acceptance doesn't mean that it's just you're accepted and everything's smoothly flowing and easy from there on out. Like, no. You may get to acceptance and then you have to go back and forth and get to acceptance again, and you have to constantly choose acceptance over and over again until that becomes your automatic response. You may find yourself frustrated because it wasn't easy after acceptance, but acceptance is only the start to your journey of healing. Okay, it's only the beginning. But you have to get to acceptance and letting go in order to begin the real deep healing process. And without it, you'll be forever stuck, and in that victim state. And this is really hard and really uncomfortable work, which is why so many suppress and hide and cope and distract themselves from facing any of this and doing the hard internal work to really get those long-term, sustainable, lasting results, or sustainable recovery or full recovery, because it takes patience and it takes that commitment along with the dedication, the repetition, and the resilience. So why even go through this? Well, because it's worth it, and it's freedom, and it's sanity, and it's a bit more peace, and it's being able to manage the suffering rather than the suffering managing you, and making your life even more of a miserable stress hole than life can already be, right? So when it comes to letting go and committing in diet recovery and, letting go of the restrictions in your diet or the extremes with your fitness regime or the extreme expectations of how your body should look that have been hurting you and stealing your health and joy, and, letting the beliefs around all these foods being terribly bad for you, and accepting that food is just food, and you can't demonize and blame food solely for this symptom and that symptom. It must be the food, so I gotta cut it. And then you just find yourself back in that corner, miserable and depleted and, yada yada. So in order to be set free from the food problems, you can't demonize and blame food solely in order to be set free from the food problems. And letting go of the shame and guilt mindsets around eating, as well as how your body looks right now, and how you have to apply more willpower and more self-control in order to reach your goals, and all these different mindsets around food and body and health, all these beliefs themselves. We may and often do go through a long period of grieving, these mindsets and beliefs and this identity that we had around our body, and we were the healthy ones, we were the fit ones, an image that we may have created, a career that we may have created, so many different things that we have to detach from that weren't really us, but we just took on through this process of trying to cope with something, of not feeling good enough, or it gave us validation, or it gave us value, or whatever. There's so many different reasons. But just know that if you're in this process of going back and forth, and you find yourself wanting to go back to the old diet and go back to the old body, and you go from anger to guilt to acceptance to, commitment, you go back and forth between these and you're so frustrated with yourself because you just want to be done and you just want to take on recovery full force and not have these, tempting thoughts all the time, or, you're just pissed off at yourself and recovery, and you just don't want to go through this, and you just want your life to be back to normal, and you just need to get your life together, these kinds of things. Just remember that this is all part of the healing process, and it's just going to take time to go and move through these phases. Okay, so be easy on yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself. Be patient. Develop that self-compassion. Know that, it took you years and years of developing the diet and body image, negative thoughts. So it's going to take some time to develop the new positive diet and body image thoughts or mindsets or beliefs. And just know that, the grieving process too, that's pseudo half-assed recovery. But don't be too hard on yourself. If you find yourself here, it's natural, and letting go and healing and all this stuff, it comes in waves, and it takes a long time of slowly letting go. And you may have to have that period of time where you go back and forth to be able to get to that point where you're just so fed up and done, where it pushes you into acceptance. Because you're just sick of going back, you're sick of feeling exhausted, you're sick of counting your calories, you're sick of weighing yourself and letting your whole day be ruined because you stepped on the scale. So you get to that point where you're just done and you're willing to do whatever it takes. So it's completely normal to go back and forth until you get to this place where you're just so done. And that's typically how it goes. But, this shouldn't be another thing that we try to suppress and avoid from happening. Why? Because, it's just a part of the recovery process, part of the healing process. Recovery just means healing, right? And balancing. So, and this, if you're just, if you don't allow it to happen how it should happen, then it can turn into yet again another thing that we shame ourselves for, beat ourselves up for. So we have to understand the grieving process and know that each time we face this adversity to recovering and letting go of these behaviors and mindsets that have been hurting us, even when we've believed for so long that they would make us happy and healthy and heal us, and desirable and sexy. It just takes a long and often drawn out time. But you're slowly chipping away, peeling back the layers of the onion, and the onion may make us cry along the way, and other times it may not. But you keep going, and you keep going back and forth and doubting and feeling guilty and feeling angry at yourself and food and your body, but also at diet culture. But then you begin to let go of the anger and let go of the fear through the process of acting on those fears and stepping into those fears, right? And you can watch my other video on how to face your fear foods, how to let go. Well, you have to take action, right? You're not just gonna sit there and, feel them just peel away. No, you have to be taking consistent action in your life to overcome them. But again, you slowly chip away. So this grieving process is longer for some rather than others, and it looks different for everyone too. And eventually, or hopefully, you get to a place where you've had enough, like I was saying. So you're fed up, you're done, you've grieved, and you're ready to accept. So you accept what is, what you've been going through, what you've done for the past years, and where you're at now because of all of it, and you accept it, and you realize, okay, this is a bigger learning lesson for me for some reason, whatever reason. It's a big learning lesson, and it's going to strengthen me, and I'm going to come out of this an even better person. And then that shift can occur, and you let go, and you fully commit to letting go because it's what's best for you. The path ahead of you, and it's not easy for the next year or a couple of years or several years, but you persist nonetheless. And, very slowly you get your health back and your life back piece by piece. So I hope this all makes sense to you. I would love to hear your feedback and comments below. If you did like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't yet subscribed, be sure to subscribe now and let me know what you would like to hear in the future. I hope you guys are doing well in your recovery process. Let me know how that's going for you. And until next time, I'll see you in the next video.